So today, my guest is Mr. Paul Abraham. He is awesome. He is in Georgia, and so very different markets than Idaho. I'd say I'm probably the Northwest, and he's the Southeast-ish. At any rate, we've become good friends. We've worked together for how long have we worked together now?
Well, we met probably 5, 6 years ago
Yeah.
when we were thinking about coming over. And then remember, the market just got so crazy busy, and we just didn't have time to even think about it at that moment. But then when the market, kind of gave us a little bump in 22, that's when we said, okay, we got to get to PMR, right?
Yeah. And
And
it's been
so
a fun adventure for sure.
it has. Listen, I'm going into my 33rd year now, Mandy. I still enjoy the business, right? I still enjoy helping people, right? That's keep telling my wife I got about another 10 left in me. And she goes, yeah, but you say that every year, right?
You keep pushing
So
it out every time, every year. You have this anniversary. My husband, Corey, he's in the business with us, and I about 10 years ago, he said, I'm going to retire in 3 years. So I have this running thing that every year he's retiring, but it seems like 3 years keeps pushing out. So same thing with your wife. I feel her. That is the same story, but I'm not sure I'd like to do this business without him in my life and as a mentor in my business and just guiding the team through the
absolutely.
process.
No, I agree 100%.
So since we've both been doing this a long time, I mean, we look young though, so I just want to go on record of that. I've been doing it. This is my 30th year. I started when I was 20 at a front desk. And how did you start in the business?
I was 26 years old, and I came out of the magazine world. That's kind of the one that I use the term taught me sales, how to talk to people. 18, 19 years old, was learning how to, do the dialing for dollars,
Yeah,
magazine sales. And Mandy, I look back on those years now and realize that it really did help me, even though I didn't ultimately see myself doing that for the rest of my life. It helped me to understand what those guys would do. They taught me. I'll never forget. I remember one of the first things they did. They put a mirror on my desk and said, "Smile as you dial," right? And and I know that that really does make a difference. The way that
absolutely.
the way that you feel, the way that you're portraying yourself, how you say it is really important. And a lot of people, I don't think, get taught that anymore, right? Some of those things that you and I learned back in the day from a Zig Ziglar, you just help enough people get what they want, you always have what you want. But anyway,
Yeah,
long
and
story short,
I think that you bring up a really valid point. So you smiled and dialed, but one thing I think some originators don't realize with that process is they can hear a lot if they just listen more and to the customer while they're on that call, right?
exactly. Yep. Yep. So when I started in the mortgage business, a guy that was working for me at the other location, he went to the mortgage industry and said, "Hey," about a year into it, he called me and said, "Hey, I think you would work really well with us over here in the mortgage industry." And I'll never forget, it was the refi business of 1993. My first month, all I did was just dial FHA, streamline refinances. I closed 7 deals in my first month. And I thought, holy cow, they paid me this much money to
You're like,
do
I
this.
love this business.
Yes. And anyway, so as soon as that dried up, though, Mandy, he said, "Hey, now you got to start talking to realtors. Now you got to go out and get the real business," right? And it drastically changed from there is when I started recognizing, okay, I got to now think of this as my own company. What do I do when I go out, meet with realtors? And that's the area that began to grow for me, is getting that realtor base. And I started to figure out a few things there. But again, for me, it what I promise, and now I say it's not about the money, but back then it was about the money.
Yeah, yeah.
It
And
was,
we ask that at business planning, like, what is your why? What drives you? And sometimes the money is fine.
yep,
Sometimes that is a fine reason to drive your why you do this business or any business for that matter.
yeah. Well, speaking of that, Jonah, he's now
Yeah.
with us and he's his fifth year, sixth year, seventh year in now, whatever he's doing now in terms of years in. But he was just born at that moment, and I did not want Gail, my wife, I call her Blondie, to have to go back to work. And so what we did is everything that Paul could do, I'm talking about, I even got a second job of throwing papers in the middle of the night. You know why? Because I knew it was going to take me about 6 months to build that business and the brand, just for me to start a regular cash flow coming in from realtors. And so that's exactly what I did is I went out and I started building those relationships, and it took me about 6 months. And guess what? Today, it still takes a loan officer about 6 months to get going. And that's if they come out with good training, right? If they just say, hey, start cold calling realtors and I hope you make it, that's a tough way to do it. You can do it that way, but it's just really tough. So what I try to do is teach loan officers strategies. Kind of what I learned is not just cold calling realtors, but how can I bring value to the situation of what they need the most? And that's
Absolutely.
generally now probably 15 years of my career has been nothing but teaching new ones. I would take somebody brand new on the street and then teach them how to become. Jonah was a mechanic 5 years ago, turning wrenches at Honda.
Yeah, his story is fascinating, and
Yeah,
he's one of the originators I interviewed for the book, and his story is
good.
fascinating because he literally did what you're talking about. He started, and I think the advice you give to originators saying, okay, it's going to take you 6 months to really get your wheels on. This is a complicated business. It's
Correct.
not a straightforward, we build widgets, you sell widgets. Every story, every loan are all different. And so you need to have an opportunity to close a lot of loans so that you can learn through that process. And having the right mentors in that first 6 months is key. And you bring up the fact that marketing is everything, right? You have to be able to make it rain, friends. You can learn them, you can be a great uh, technician of the mortgage business and fail. You can know
Hmm.
all of the loan programs, all of those things, and
Correct.
fail in the business
Yes,
because 75% of your time really should be spent, at least 50, hunting, looking for
that's
new
right.
opportunities, keeping your current ones. Don't you? I mean, I'm speaking your love language right now, right? So I think that that's probably what you tell new originators, and that's what I tell myself. And I tell myself, not to, I think for a while I begged for the business. I felt
Yeah,
like in the very beginning, I was like, I would do anything. And
yep,
honestly, that is such a bad feeling that,
yes,
when you're just
yes,
kind of begging for business and you're like, I'll do anything for you. You
right.
feel like you're subservient to that relationship. And I think that the biggest thing that has changed is recognizing you can find equal partners that value you as the lender as much as you value them as the agent, and together you can build great partnerships. And I think that if I would have had to tell myself, go find those partnerships early in your career, because you will love the mortgage business a lot more than filling in a subservient role, I think.
Yes. And Mandy, you are so right there because again, I felt the same way when my mom was a realtor as I was growing up, and literally my whole life she was a real estate agent. And so I began to think that every realtor was like my mom because that's all I had to compare to.
Yeah.
So, long story short, is when I started recognizing that most of these realtors were not understanding even how to get the business, right? See, I was going to them, asking them for leads, begging them. And what I realized was Susie knew me, liked me, and trusted me, but she wasn't getting any deals, right? So that's the area where I started saying, why don't I help them get better at getting leads? Why don't I help them get better at getting listings? Why don't I help them get better at getting marketing, sales? You know what I did? I started recognizing that when I was doing it, the realtors started seeing me as the asset, right?
Right,
And saying,
right.
holy cow, you're helping me get more business than my broker is, right? And that's when I started to realize I was on to something. And that was a total flip of the model. Now, this was early in my career that I actually was going out at 4 a.m. in the morning, dropping flyers at apartment buildings, right? And the reason I did that was so that the maintenance men wouldn't catch me. But you know what it did, Mandy? The leads started calling me, right?
Right.
And that's the spot. I'll tell every new loan officer here today that leads is where your leverage is, right? Listings is where your leverage is. Sales, marketing, it's not the loan products. Now, again, I'm not opposed to great loan products, right? But you and I know, Mandy, most of them are 30-year fixed, right?
Yeah.
How many, just think about it. How many times can I sit and tell a realtor about a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, right? There's only so many ways we can say that, right? And see, but when 85% of them quit, and I'm talking about realtors here, if 85% of them quit, what's the real problem? The real problem is they're not real good with the four that I mentioned: leads, listings, sales, marketing. That's where they're not real good at. Now, again, it's not that they're bad people. I think it's the same thing as anything on a loan officer. I think that they're just being taught, start cold calling people and tell them you sell real estate, and I hope you make it, right?
Well,
Uh,
and when you get that appointment that they say, yes, I want to meet with you, Paul or Mandy, I've learned over time, and one thing I would tell my younger self is interview that new prospective agent and ask them about their business. Ask them about their social media.
yes.
Ask them about their database or sphere management. Are they mailing it? Do they call them? Do they have a text plan? Do they have a CRM? Are they working listings, and how are they working those listings, open houses? Are they successful working their open houses? I would go down all the list of things
Correct.
that agents do and ask them about their business, and if you're like me and a talker, I'm a talker. So
Yep.
I take a notepad and make notes during that. I just say, hey, I'm going to make some notes during our meeting because I want to retain everything. And I want to be able to follow up with that agent, because then I don't leave that meeting going, let's work together. I say, let's have a follow-up meeting if you think this partnership's going to work, and let me look at your list of things and see where I can help you with your business. Because to your
Yep.
point, a lot of them do need different things in those aspects that they're not getting. I mean, some folks went from, like you said, you were a salesperson and came into the mortgage space. Well, you had to learn the mortgage space. That's true of agents too, right? They have to learn the real estate
Yes.
industry.
Yep.
It's more than just writing a contract. I say that their number one thing is being a counselor, probably for most realtors, but but I think that interviewing and just taking a notepad and being a student of their business and what their plans are, and then coming back and adding value later, gives you an opportunity to have not one, but 2 meetings or 2 calls with that agent.
Well, yes. And again, I love what you're saying, that you don't beg for the deals, but you're saying, how can we make this a win-win, right? The famous book by Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Always look for the win-win. And if it's not, then don't do it, right?
Right.
If it's not win-win, if you are paying somebody to give you leads and stuff, then you stick with that guy, right? I'm just not a big fan, Mandy, of paying somebody for the lead. I think you can originate it on your own. You can get your own, and especially in today's world, right, with social, it's so much easier now than it's ever been, right? Now, that being said, it comes back to when I help that realtor get better in those 4 categories. Now you start to see, is she an A, B, or C player?
Yeah,
And unfortunately,
good point.
most of them are B's and C's. And again, it's not that they're bad people. I'm not saying that. I'm saying is that they're not going to be the A player. Usually about 1 out of 10 realtors is your A player, right? Meaning she going after it just as hard as you and I are, right? Most of them are fit that B and C. Now, again, I think of myself as me helping them get to A, right? Because if I can help that girl get to A, guess what?
It benefits
She's going to
you.
be with me. Yeah. She's going to be the one that says, hey, I've already got my preferred lender. Her name is Mandy Swain, right? And you hear a loan officer say, "Oh, they're not very loyal." I disagree. I guarantee you, you got probably, I don't know how many that say Mandy Swain's my preferred lender, right? You
Well,
probably
and
have it just
I
like
think
Jonah does.
yeah, exactly. And I think to your point, measure, I ask typically how much volume an agent's done, because you're going to get to a point in your career, you're only going to have so many bullets to shoot. You can't chase all these rabbits and catch any of them.
That's right.
So
That's
you
right.
end up finding people you align with, that you like, they're like-minded. They believe the same thing about real estate as you do. I have a deep passion for homeownership, and I want to align myself with people that aren't just transactional, but care long term about that person. And I would say this: when you are interviewing agents, one thing I've learned too is asking them what their 12-month plan is. How many units they're going to do on the buy side, how many they're going to do on the list side. If you're one of three lenders, let's say they're like, we're going to have three lenders that we work with, and I'm going to do 15 buy sides. Well, we know some of those buy sides are going to be cash. We know
Correct.
Some of those buy sides are going to go with their cousin, their uncle, their brother, their somebody. So now you're down to, if they're doing 15 deals, now you're down to maybe 8 or 10
That's
that are
right.
being split between three preferred lenders. And so that's maybe 3 transactions a year. So you have to measure that. If your goal is to say hit 50 units this year, that's like what, 1% of your overall goal for the year?
Exactly.
So you can only spend about 1% of your time developing that relationship.
See, and again, you're talking about reverse engineering, right? Which is, I try to teach them that all the time. That's the reason you'll hear me say, and you see me say it a lot in the group, you got to have 100 realtors in today's market, right? I used to tell Jonah when he first started, Mandy, 100 realtors in 2 years. Now I say 100 realtors in 90 days. You know why? It's because the market really has pulled down to less transactions per realtor category, right? You know that, I know that. Now, if that's true, then what we have to do is say, okay, how can we expand that market, right? How do we make our market more bigger than what it used to be? And I'm talking about loan officers here, right? How do I expand on what I do? That's the reason I'm talking about state now. You and I know we used to never talk about state, right? You would talk about Boise and probably that little area, and I would talk about Atlanta and that little area. But now I'm telling every loan officer, you need to be thinking state, right? Because social has made our world so much smaller now, right? That's the beauty for us loan officers. If you're in this business and you're not using social, I'm telling you, it's the best tool I've ever seen.
You made me use social. You encouraged it, and I have been better about posting on a regular basis. And it's funny, I don't know that I'm getting actual transactions from it, but man, when you go out in the market, it's funny. I think, don't look for your likes, that'll bum you out. Look for your views, because that'll help you feel like that you can keep moving ahead. So watch for your views. And I'm seeing people in the market and they're like, Mandy, oh my gosh, I've seen you on social. Thank you so much for the information you provide. Well, that you can't really get an ROI on that, but I'll tell you, if people are seeing you on a regular basis, you are top of mind to them.
Mandy, I'm telling you right now, don't even worry about views. All you need to worry about is, and again, I'm saying this to even myself and every loan officer, are you bringing value to the consumer and the realtor out there on the other end? And by the way, if you bring it to the consumer, you're bringing it to the realtor, right? So in other words, don't even worry. Don't even look at the stats. Just keep, again, Zig said, help them get what they want and you'll always have what you want. Don't worry about the return on investment. The return on investment will come, right? Because I know what you're saying. You try to analyze it and say everything down to a T. Can I analyze? Am I getting business from this? And I'm just telling you, where is everybody's attention? It's on their phone. It's on some type of social platform. Very few people anymore are watching television like the commercial, and if they do, they turn it off and skip to the next thing, right?
Right.
it
So
yeah,
true. So true.
yeah,
And it doesn't take me that long. Once you kind of get it down and you get comfortable, and done's better than perfect, friends. You
that's
just need
it.
to just put it out
Yes.
there to the universe and be okay. And for me, I didn't watch my videos for the longest time because I was so self-conscious about like, we went in the mortgage business. I didn't go into it to be on camera and talk and all these
Yeah,
things, right? I didn't
yeah,
become a broadcaster. So you're having to learn a new skill. And that was my commitment this year, is just to learn and be at 30 years later, I'm still learning. And I think Paul would say that too. He's still learning and evolving and to
100%.
teach and be a better mentor to his team. Be a student of this business, be a student of the environment around you, because you will win if you are a student. Now, I'm with you, Paul. You've got to do a little bit of all of it, and measuring it all to the T is that always going to get you what the results you want. But consistency and processes are absolutely everything in this business, right?
Yes, yes, yes. And again, once you do it consistently, I always say consistency is more important than the content. Meaning me seeing you, Mandy, every time I see Mandy, that mortgage girl, she just keeps telling me how to buy a piece of Idaho, which, by the way, think about that, Mandy. You get to help people buy one of the prettiest states in the union, right? Yeah, and I genuinely, I loved Idaho when we came out there. Loved to come back, and I tell everybody, you get to help people buy a piece of America, right?
Yeah, very
It
cool.
everybody's flocking to America to what? Have a little piece of it, right? And we get to do that as loan originators. Now, see, now you're talking about mindset, which is exactly what I do with loan officers right off the bat. I say, look, if your goal is to help people, don't you think they should know who you are, Mandy? Right? Because your goal is to help people, right?
Right,
Not
right.
hurt them,
No,
not just to make the money, right?
right.
That if all we did was make money, that's really, to be honest with you, about the thing that becomes most boring. But if I helped you buy a piece of America and you get to create that equity, here's one of the great posts that I like for new ones to post. I said, look, go in to your consumer base and post this question. You can even do it on yours, Mandy, where you say, hey, tell me what you paid for your first house in Zillow, and tell me what does Zillow say that it's worth now today, right? It's such a fun post to like, then you start to see the amount of equity that you help clients get. It's unbelievable, right? When you think about the amount of equity, Mandy, that you've created yourself, can you just
I'm
tell
writing it down.
Candace.
I'm not ignoring you, but I just wrote it down so I could post it
Yeah,
later.
but see, if you get to show the amount of equity that you have helped somebody create, look at the amount of, especially you and your team, right? The number is off the charts, so good, right?
It's
Of
such
how
a
much
blessing,
equity.
really. Family, a home and family and stability of a home. I think that sometimes as loan officers that we don't weigh how big of a difference that makes in people's lives long term. Renting a home, there's still this question of how long will I be here, or there's a little bit of unsettling, right? And
Yep.
so I would say, loan officers will ask me sometimes, like, Mandy, how are you combating, they can rent versus buy, and maybe buying is more expensive and this and that. And I will tell you this, the value that being a homeowner has, I don't think a lot of loan officers stay in that mindset of, hey, why did you want to buy a house in the first place? What was your main goal? Why did you want to do this? And it wasn't just about the payment. It was about a lot more things than just the mortgage itself. It was about having a home, being able to paint the walls, having stability for my family, being able to have a yard, whatever it was. That is what we need to focus on. And then subsequently, I think that one area that I think a lot of loan officers miss, reminding clients, is they're going to have a tax deduction in the most part if they're a homeowner versus if they're a renter, and it could change their taxes at the end of the year. I don't think a lot of people think of that when they're talking to consumers, right?
Yeah, let me just say that 95% of the consumers out there in my world should be buying real estate to create generational wealth. Number one, I know because I know it did for me. You're talking to a guy, Mandy, that was raised on a chicken farm in North Georgia who barely passed high school, right? And then they let this guy get a mortgage at 21. And then we sold that property 10 years later for what we paid for it. And I was like, holy cow, we just made, I promise you, this guy did not have 78,000 when I first bought my house, but that was the first house we bought in Atlanta or just north of Atlanta. And it was 78,000. We converted it 10 years later to twice what we paid for it. By the time we got to the third property, I can just tell you that everything that we built in equity was because of somebody gave me a mortgage, right? They basically, mortgage is my leverage, right? In other words, it's giving you money that you really, most people don't really have. So it's giving you the leverage to take advantage of the American dream.
Well, and the American mortgage process really is quite unique. It doesn't happen in any other country in the world. We're really quite fortunate to be in this business and have a free market that allows for this. There are checks and balances. We have more rules than ever, but we are really blessed. A lot of countries offer like a 7-year mortgage at an interest only, and then you have to refinance it in 7 years or only leasehold. I mean, we're really quite blessed in America.
Oh my gosh. And again, this is the mindset that every loan officer, if you take away from this call today, that you get to change people's lives by giving them a mortgage. Now, some people would say you just put them in debt. I actually view it as a contract. I don't think it's a debt. I think it's a contract between you and the lender, right? So you, the lender, has said, look, I'm going to give you this money to buy this piece of property. If you don't make the payments, I'm taking the property, the contract back, right?
Right.
So you as the borrower getting the money, you're saying if I don't make the payment, you can have the equity back, right? That's what you said.
Right.
So I think of it as a contract, not a debt, right? Now, again, and I know we're not talking about putting in people houses that they can't afford, right? If you can't afford it, then you need to go get a second job, right?
Yeah.
You do what you got to do to buy real estate, right?
Throw papers at 4 a.m., right? That's what you did.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I did. And I hated that, by the way. I hated that.
Sometimes you hate it, but you love your family and you love moving ahead and progressing in your life enough that you're willing to do the hard stuff. So pick your heart, right? Pick your heart. That's right. Something that I like to say, because a lot of things are hard and the choices sometimes are hard, but pick your hard. I know for me, on the first house I bought it for $102,000 in 98. And during the pandemic, I had just lost my dad to pancreatic cancer, and family and having that stability was really important in our lives. And so Corey had an investment property that he owned free and clear. So by then we paid down those mortgages. To Paul's point, we not only paid them down, but now that $102,000 house I bought in 98 as a young person, that was a stretch, man. So if you are in, feel me, 102,000 was a stretch, and I know 400,000 is a stretch now for a lot of people. But with that said, I sold that house for almost $400,000. And to Paul's point, I'm not sure of any other investment in even a 20-year cycle that I would have made $300,000. I mean, that's crazy, right?
It really is. And again, that's the reason that every loan officer on this call or that watches this, you really need to understand the value that you bring to the consumer. And then so what I teach loan officers there, Mandy, is that your purpose is to help people get what they're looking for, right? And then if you think about it from the real estate agent side, I teach the agent to do the same thing, because I think a lot of agents don't fully understand that either, right? It's just not just a transaction. You get to go help people buy something that they otherwise could not get, right?
Right.
And when you start teaching the agent that, now she starts to feel purpose, which is really the driving You ever heard this phrase? It's hard to stop a woman on a mission, right? When you give a woman a mission, man, or a man a mission, it's hard to stop them, right?
Right.
And that's the reason that you try to keep loan officers. So that became my number one goal for teaching new ones. It wasn't about teaching them, quote, necessarily how to stay in the business. I'm talking about how to do the business. It was how to stay in the business, right? Because I knew, man, if I could keep them 2 years, they would stay, right? And that
Right.
almost always is the key point with a new one. If you can keep him 2 years, he's going to stay. If you can keep him 2 years. The key is teaching him how to create the lead flow, which then creates the cash flow, right?
Right.
If
Right.
he if he doesn't get the lead flow, he gets no cash flow, right?
Right.
So you
Right.
got to create the lead flow first, and then the lead flow will create cash flow. Now, will he make mistakes? Heck yes, they do. So did I. So did you, right? We all made
Yes.
mistakes, but you learn through those mistakes and you get better. And then I call it becoming that Chick-fil-A loan officer, right?
Yeah, you don't lose, you learn, right?
That's right.
You're if you are a constant student of your own, and you have humility and grace for yourself, you can get through those times that you do make mistakes, because I do think that's
Correct.
true as a new or a loan officer. And I do think that you're not seeing the check right away, so that's very hard to. And that Paul
Yes.
brings up a good point, to get through that first couple years, because you're not seeing the production of, the fruits of that labor. So I think that a thing to look at is, um, how did you win this week? What was something you won at this week? Because
Yep.
it takes time. I mean, I know for me, if I start a new relationship with an agent, it could take 90 days, it could take 6 months, it could take a year. And for your home run relationships, it could take even longer.
Listen, if one guy's learned, especially the last 3 to 4 years, Mandy, I started that group 7 years ago on Facebook for
Yeah.
new loan officers.
Yeah.
And I literally have some of them call me today and say, I've been seeing your stuff for 7 years and I'm finally calling you today. Right.
Yep.
And I'm saying that to you and to every loan officer that listens. My job is not that I necessarily get them calling me every day. It's that I keep pushing the value to them, and then they call
They
me
call
because they
you.
keep seeing the
Right.
value, right? My position is to plant and water, right? I think God gives the increase, and I say that very genuinely to you, that my my system is like this: faith, family, and then my finances, right?
Yep.
I need to keep it in that order, because if I don't, it gets out of whack for me.
Well, and if you
Right.
don't know, Paul has a group with over 40,000 LOs in it. It's a new loan officer group on Facebook. You can look it up and find it. And he does provide a ton of value and a ton of ideas in that group. I love following the group and being a part of the group. I just think that it's a great community of where people can come and ask
Yep.
questions or and I do think that you didn't start that group because you thought you were going to make all this money. You started the group
No.
because you wanted to serve others and be a servant leader. And I think, I applaud that, because I think in a lot of ways in this environment, when things are hopping and going so fast and people are trying just to keep up, you slowed down and said, what can I do for others? And then ultimately, as a mentor and a coach, and now running your own region and area for Premier, you continue to build, and you've done that by building up other people's careers and really loving people into it. That's what I call it. Just love them into it, right?
Yeah. And then again, it goes back to what you were saying, is that once you keep providing that value, and then ultimately, like I said, if I would have looked at this 3 years ago and said, what was my ROI on it? I promise you, it was zero negative, right? And again, I just kept saying, let me follow the pattern that I've always done. It's just a slower pattern when you think about the US, right? The whole
Right.
US.
Right.
But all I can say is now is I got guys calling me left and right, wanting me to sell something in that group, wanting me to push something. And again, I personally have looked at that and said, there is ways that I can monetize it, and I have. But at the end of the day, it really still keeps coming back. Just bring value. And that's the other thing I'll say about social. Everything now has gotten to where everybody knows everything because it is social, right? So in
Mhm.
other words, if you don't post it, somebody else will, right?
Right.
There is no, I don't think you see a whole lot of secrets anymore in a sense of how do you get the business. I'll just say it this way. I've shared it with so many people on how to get the business. It's not, that does not make the difference. It's those that go out and execute on what I said, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Could not agree more. I said, I'm willing to give you my playbook, like all my secret plays. Here you go. Here's
Yep.
everything I've done in my career. And that's why I'm writing the book and
Yep.
sharing with loan officers, is because I really do just want to pay it forward and share my story and share ways that I succeeded. But those things that I did, I would say I would give them to anyone, and those people that are going to win are going to be in the 1 or 2%, because those are the people that want it bad enough, that are willing to do the things it takes over and over, day in and day out. I'm not saying that you can
Yep.
just try something for a month or 2 months. That's what I
Yep.
see when I see folks fail, is they instead of pivoting the plan, saying,
Yep.
okay, this is
Yep.
my plan, like you were, I'm going to create my group. And it maybe 3 or 4 years ago, you didn't stop, you just pivoted your plan, or how you did it. So if something's not quite working, that would be my suggestion. That's why we do
Yep.
business planning every year, is we look at those action items you do associated with that plan. What are the things that you do, the nuts and bolts, and by what date, that get the job done, right? Because a lot of times the reason people fail is they have this big grand idea and a strategy, but nothing daily that keeps them on task for that, right? Don't you feel like you
Yeah.
talk to a lot of originators, more than me even?
Yeah, well, and that comes back to, again, that plan that you might do. Sometimes it's just pivoting just a little bit, right? Or it's saying something a little bit different to a realtor than what you said before, right? I can get them in front of realtors, I promise you, every day. But sometimes I say, look, I think you're overselling yourself, right? Or you're
Yes.
still begging for the deal, right? You're still the one begging. Don't beg, because see, then I listen to say, how did you say it, and what was that term? People don't think that that's important. I do. I think what you say and how you say it is very important, right? And so I say, call it the likability factor, and I'll say it this way: authenticity of who you are, right? Authenticity, you cannot overdo authenticity, meaning people can sniff you out if you're
Yeah.
not authentic, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And if you're not, they're going to sniff you out and say at some point they're going to find out that you're not authenticity. And so that's why I try to say, look, be who you are. It's
And find
okay.
your tribe. There will be an
Yeah,
agent that is like you. If you're,
exactly.
if you're a perfectionist, they're a perfectionist. Find your tribe in this
Yes,
business. I mean, in my market, local market, I think there's over 3,000 agents. There's got to be 100 of them that I
yes.
align with, right, friends? I mean, just there's got to be 100 people that you can jive with, align with. They want to give
That's
to
right.
charity. You want to give to charity. They want to help with first-time home buyers. They love veterans. Whatever it is, whatever your nature is, find your tribe, find your
That's
people.
it. Yeah. And that's why I even say, for different people, sometimes it is a different style, right? I don't, everything that I teach, I say, look, I'm going to give you a template. Mine's just a template, but I want you to be you, right? I don't want you not to, because again, if you start being me, then guess what? You're not being authentic, right?
Right, right.
Be who you are. There's a girl that, matter of fact, we just put her on the team, Brianna Cave.
Yeah.
If you look at her post that she did for me in the new loan officer group, she went and done a group setting. You know how realtors bring you in to pay for their breakfast, and then you start telling them about the little dog and pony show of the mortgages, right? Well, she said, Paul, this is my very first one. Now, mind you, I was coaching her prior to her coming over to PMR. I was coaching her. So I said, here's what I want you to do, Brianna. Number one is I want you to be different, not the same. And I want you to go in with the attitude that you help realtors grow their business. You are not there begging, right? Long story short, if you watch it, Mandy, the girl did what I call, she's a beekeeper here in Georgia. And she went in and did a presentation on how real estate is related to beekeeping. And Mandy, it was so good because these realtors were just laughing and with her in, and I call it, she had them in the palm of her hand. And she was showing them how she was different as a loan officer, not showing up just as the talk about 30-year mortgages, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, I think this girl is going to be a go-getter. She's doing everything I've told her to do and just coming out of the gate and saying, hey, the realtors are calling me now, right? And it's because she went in and was different. She was who she was, right?
Yeah, I just love that you're paying it forward. You're just paying it forward and building these other people's careers. And it sounds like she really wants it. And she's coachable.
Oh, she does.
Be coachable, friends. Be coachable. Be willing to hear the good, the bad about how you're doing things, because you will end up better if you are willing to tweak and listen to those things. I mean, Paul, I know when I was in the start of the business, I know I didn't do everything right. I know that the mentors I had that helped me in the business were critical, because just body language, overselling a transaction to a customer, convincing them that they need a 30-year mortgage when that's probably what they're going to get is probably, right. I see a lot of loan officers talk themselves right out of a transaction or a partnership with an agent.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And again, they say that in sales, right? When somebody says yes, shut up and take the order, right? Shut up and take the order.
Well, on that note, I think that's a perfect way to end today's podcast. And if you have not joined Paul's group, do that. He offers a lot of value add, and he just loves the business, loves loan officers, loves home buyers and agents. And you're just putting a lot of good juju out into the universe. And so for that, you have my heart, because that is a gift to others. And I'm grateful that you've taken your success and pay it forward.
All right. Thank you much. Okay. I'll see you.